Hey, what is going on, guys? Project Flux recently released their first content update for Season 4, so in today's video I want to discuss what came into Project Flux, as well as some future features that are being discussed. So we'll talk about progression updates, Siphon, NA servers, future planned features that are officially mentioned, and then some ones that aren't officially mentioned but I hear are being discussed. Okay, first off, progression updates. So the Week 2 challenges are now available for you to complete, and I also know there was a hyperinflation issue in Project Flux where everything in the shop became very expensive. That appears to have been fixed, so hopefully that won't happen again, but, you know, unfortunately if you missed out on items, not a lot we can do there. Okay, next, Siphon. So, Siphon is working. You get 50 health, 50 of each material, and those materials land on your opponent's loot pile. They do not get delivered to you directly. Overall, this is a non-historical change to Season 4, but as I always say, I'm much more in favor of gameplay improvement over historical accuracy. I think this is an excellent change, right? Without Siphon, I just find you spend too much time looting, too much time farming materials. With this, if say you get 3 people, well, you got 3 big pots and 450 mats, right? Great. Saves time. It generally can encourage some fighting, and also that can help you with third parties a bit. So if you just eliminate someone and someone else pushes you, well, you get a boost to mats and a boost to health. So overall, I think it's a good change. If they want to adjust how aggressive players are, this is not an on-off switch. They can always reduce Siphon or increase it, right? So just, we'll see where they go. I think probably they're going to leave at a 50 health and 50 materials of each type, though. Okay, next up, NA servers. So NA servers were available at launch. There were some issues after the launch. The good news is I did try it after the content update. They are working correctly. At this point, I think only solo will be reasonably playable given the player count. Duos isn't great, but if you do want to play duos, EU is where you really have to do that. But if you want to play solos, NA seems good enough to be able to play. Okay, now let's talk about some of the future planned features. So they did specifically mention that playground support will be coming to the next content update, which will hopefully be by the end of the week. Of course, Project Flux has been late on a lot of things, so it might take a little longer than that, but hopefully that's actually when it's going to come. Playgrounds, I think, will be really fun, but I also am a bit concerned that that will hurt the player count in each mode. What I hope they would do is consider, when they add in Playground, temporarily remove duos and squads and just fully remove it. So in that situation, there'll only be solos and Playgrounds. So hopefully there'll be enough players in both modes. And then maybe after a week, they switch it out and do, I don't know, solos and duos. And then the next week, maybe they do duos and Playgrounds. Right? If they mix up the modes, whatever those modes are, only have like 2 at a time, I think that should be enough to keep the player count high enough. If they have all 4 modes at the same time, I'd be very concerned that we're going to run into the same issue that we had in Era Season 7, where there were player count issues because there were too many modes. Okay, next off, I should be fixing traps and shopping carts. Right now, I have noticed that traps don't work consistently, so don't rely on traps. They may not actually work, and then they're also going to be fixing stuff like broken challenges and server performance. One final note that is important is I know a lot of you have been asking about the sprint by default, binds mod, and the compass fix. Those are planned to be coming in the next update. At least sprint by default, this is officially mentioned, but all of those are being discussed. And these should hopefully be a built-in feature, like toggleable in the settings, so it should be very easy for everybody to use them. Hopefully that will come as soon as possible, as I think those make the game so much more enjoyable to play. Okay, finally, let's talk about some things that aren't officially mentioned, but I know are being discussed. And really the big two is, should they introduce the drum gun, and should they buff the pump? Now, I might do a full video on both these topics if you guys are curious on my in-depth thoughts, but just initially what I think is the drum gun is historical to 4.5, so I absolutely think it should be there. However, the drum gun will be extremely broken. It will easily be the strongest weapon in the game. And the problem with the drum gun is that the drum gun is extremely easy to use. I mean, even against the TAC SMG is much harder to use because you have a much more limited magazine, less than 3 seconds of spray, and it's more accurate. So TAC SMG, it's a beast if you're accurate and know when to spray, but if you just spam your magazine and nothing, you're going to run out very quickly. Drum gun, you're going to spam 50 rounds for over 5 seconds. It's super inaccurate, so it's very easy to use. I wouldn't be against them nerfing the drum gun a little bit. Like, for instance, maybe we go down to 22, 23 damage instead of 26, 27. It'd still be really strong, but it wouldn't be as dominant. But I do think it should exist in some form, because it was historical to this time, and I do think it should be strong, but maybe turning it down a little bit isn't a horrible idea. And in terms of the pump shotgun buff, well, to be honest, I don't think the pump shotgun is in desperate need of a buff. I'm not against buffing it, which we will discuss briefly, but honestly, I think people get used to the fact that the pump is always the most dominant shotgun. Era Season 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Pump shotgun was really the most dominant shotgun. And I think, for once, the pump is not the most dominant shotgun. That really goes to the heavy, and it's still viable. But I can understand that people want to be able to do 200 damage. So really, if they want to do that, what I would do is just increase both the pump and tax headshot multiplier from 2.0 to 2.5. You don't need to buff the base damage back, because if you have 80 damage times a 2.5x headshot, that'll give you 200 damage. Boom. I think that'll be problem solved. I think the pump and the heavy then would be very competitive with each other. Heavy might still have the slight edge, but if you're an accurate player who can make those one pumps work, you might prefer the pump, and that's where I'd put it there. I don't think it's necessary to buff it all the way back to the way it was before in earlier Season 4. I don't think the pump was necessarily super broken in that state, but I think we should do the changes that are needed for improvements to gameplay. But if we don't need additional changes, leave it as historical as we can get. So with that, I hope this video was interesting, and I'll catch you in the next one.